Alright, Batman Ultimate Movie Collection from McFarlane. This is something that I picked up out of genuine curiosity, genuine interest. I did not see this set coming. It got announced and was, well, first it was like leaked, and it had a day or two to kind of be like, wait a minute, is this a real thing? Is people like, are they actually doing this? And yeah, turned out to be totally true. This is a 6-figure set with the following Batman figures involved. You got the 89, a Forever, a Batman and Robin, you got a Dark Knight, you got a Batman v Superman, I believe, and then you've got a Robert Pattinson version. I think that's Batman v Superman. I don't think that's Justice League. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it is. Probably says on the box. Alright, so never mind. It says Justice League. I'm wrong. Box art's actually awesome. You can see this Gotham City picture. It looks kind of like the 89 skyscape. Then again, I don't know, GCPD and stuff, like it looks like you got elements of like 89 back here, but then there's kind of a more modern, like Dark Knight kind of aesthetic going on in the front. I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know what I'm talking about. Overall though, great presentation. I mean, the box is beautiful for a set like this, and you know, once you open it up, I think you'll agree that this is just a really nice looking set. So once you open the box, it's like Velcroed on the side. You got a nice little display. I think these are individual like little trays that come out that you can pull out the figures. Each figure has a nice little display. You got the logo from the movie it belongs to there. You got the bat signal with different logos that you can put on depending on which version of Batman you're using it with. You got stands, you got trading cards, all the stuff that comes with your typical McFarlane DC Universe figure is coming here, like with this whole set. This set was about 120 bucks, I believe, which is right in line with McFarlane's figure pricing. You've got each figure and, you know, a few accessories here and there for each one, running you about 20 bucks a piece, which is, honestly, it's a really good price for a figure since, you know, Hasbro's probably up around 25, 26. Mattel, you're looking at probably about 23, 24. Other companies, you know, they're going to fluctuate and vary depending on the lines you collect, but McFarlane, to their credit, is charging you 20 bucks. Now, is that enough to get everybody to love the line? Not necessarily. There are certainly critiques that many people have, myself included, for McFarlane, and we'll get into some of those here, but good value for the money that you spend, I believe, anyway. And, you know, let's see what we're getting into here. Alright, got them all open, got them all out of the box, and my honest first impressions are, there is a lot to like about this set. There are a lot of pretty interesting, unique details going on with each and every one of these figures. Now, I'm not an expert with McFarlane. I can't really get into this without talking about my opinions of like DC Multiverse, the line. So it started, I want to say, in like 2020, the beginning of the year is when Todd got the DC license, and they started cranking figures out like at a rapid pace. I would argue to the detriment of the quality of some of those earlier figures. Like there's some issues I have with some of those earlier ones. Now again, I'm not going to sit here and trash the entire DC Multiverse line. Like while there are a lot of issues that I have with, you know, many figures in the line, there are definitely some standout gems that I think are genuinely really great figures. There are like the White Knight Batman, there's the recent Nightfall one, the Devastator. Like certain figures in the line are just genuinely very, very nice. But having said that, it's not a line that I pay super close attention to because it's just, I don't know, something about it is not really, it's not gripping me, you know. When I see it on the shelf, it's nothing that makes me be like, oh, I gotta have this. Even though, like I said before, it's affordably priced. Even just looking at this set, for example, it's just, you know, the sculpt detail is totally different and unique across the board for each one of these characters, each one of these versions of Batman, I should say. So while people are gonna complain about, like, you know, Hasbro or Mattel or somebody else like using different molds like repeatedly for different characters, I understand that argument, and I understand why people are frustrated just basically buying the same mold over and over again with like a different coat of paint. Meanwhile, McFarlane's out here doing individual figures, totally unique, and pricing them cheaper than a lot of the Mattel and Hasbro stuff. I totally get that argument. It's just, you know, something about this line in general doesn't necessarily grab me as much as maybe it should. I don't know. But that said, I'm not somebody who just outright hates McFarlane or like thinks that these figures are bad or anything like that. There are definite points that I think could be improved in some manner, but like that's every figure line across the board has things that I would nitpick. It's part of being a collector, you know. You always gotta just have your own opinion on the figures. With that said, I'm gonna give you my honest opinion on these guys. I'm not gonna go super deep into like articulation and posing and like all that kind of stuff. I might do that with like the first figure we talk about and then just assume the rest applies across the board. With that out of the way, let's get started. So before we talk about the figures, I'll talk about the accessories that came in here. You got the cards that I talked about a little bit, and we'll talk about each one of these as pertains to the figure that it relates to. You also get these stands. They're just the basic DC Multiverse circular stands. I use these a lot for my stop motion because they work pretty well across various different figure lines. So those are cool to have, definitely. And then last and possibly coolest is the bat signal. It comes with this base, and it comes with the actual like lamp part of it. So, oh, it's articulated too, nice. So it looks like this just slides down into the thing and clips into place. Let's see if I can do this. So you'll see it comes loaded with the Dark Knight version of the bat signal in there, but you could pop that out and switch it with a few of the various different ones. So you got like the Snyderverse one here, you got the 89 looking one, which is great, and then you've got the Robert Pattinson newer version. So that's really cool that it has all that. It looks like it comes preloaded with batteries too, maybe. Let's find out. And there you go. Comes preloaded with the batteries, which is great. It's those little like button cell batteries. Takes 3 of them. You just pop a little pull tab out the back and you're off and running. This is a pretty decent light. I mean, it's bright. It's a little like LED, it looks like, in the back. So I mean, I can see a lot of use out of this, even if you don't even necessarily like the figures. Like this accessory, really nice. So the front of this does pop off. I did it off camera because it doesn't like, you know, pull off super easily because it clips in here. There's a little hole at the bottom here where it's kind of easy to just, you know, when the plate is plugged in, you can just pop it off with your thumb like that. And then you can replace it with, you know, whichever one of these you want. I'll just put the newest one on right here. And then pop this right back on and, you know, that's not on all the way, but just to show you, you're off and running. Alright, so let's start right out of the gate with Michael Keaton, 1989 Batman. For my money, this is a very nice figure. Do I think it's necessarily the most screen accurate representation? No, not really. We'll get to that. But it is probably the most posable 89 Batman you're going to get on the market right now as far as like, you know, modern figures and modern collectibles. What I mean is there was a NECA one in like 2015 or 2016 or something like that. I had it, but it broke out of the package, so when I got a replacement one, I just you know, just kept it mint, because that's back when NECA was kind of notoriously having like a lot of QC issues with some of their figure lines, particularly like that DC line they had. But then there was the Mezco, which I talked about on my channel earlier this year, and while that's a great looking figure, it's not the most posable thing ever, and I've seen some people have issues with the internal skeleton, like kind of, you know, popping out or breaking or whatever the case, and then you're left with a figure that you can't pose. So, you know, don't love that. But posing this guy's not going to be a problem. You can see he's got like much more head movement than Keaton ever had. He's got a lot of great up and down, especially if you pair it with like the hip and the diaphragm joint. You can get him looking all the way up, all the way forward and down. Great stuff. Get the arm rotated around the whole figure like that. Probably get it up over, just a hair over 90 degrees on the arms, which is nice, on the shoulders. Really nice deep double elbow joint. It's a hinge and a swivel at the wrist, so if you want the wrist to kind of swing in and out or up and down depending on what it is, you're gonna have to like manipulate that joint inside the actual like glove part itself before you can do that. But that's kind of common across the board for McFarlane figures, so if you already have any McFarlane stuff, you know what to expect. You can pretty much do a split, which is great range of motion there. He'll kick about that far forward. The like the crotch area, this like diaper thing, does tend to get in the way a little bit, but it's not like super restrictive, I would say. It's just, you know, just kind of the way they engineered their figure. It makes it look a little bit more seamless in the front, so you don't have like these weird cuts going into the legs, but at the same time it does just get in the way slightly. Ankle hinge, there's a twist, and there is a little bit of a ankle rocker in there that, actually it's better than I thought it was going to be. Ankle rocker, so that's nice. Deep double jointed knee, which I love seeing. The only notable articulation that I think McFarlane figures kind of across the board lack is a thigh cut or a thigh swivel. You can't really swivel his thighs, which, I mean, it looks clean aesthetically, but it is kind of just annoying that there's certain poses you'll just never be able to hit with this figure. He also does have a bicep cut and the butterfly joints in the shoulders, so if you want to exaggerate arm movement and stuff like that, you will be able to do that. Alright, so here's where I'm going to get into some very, very minor nitpicks about this figure. You know, you can take them or leave them, your mileage is going to vary, but the cowl, famously in the 1989 movie especially, the cowl was one piece that kind of scalloped over his shoulders and led to these kind of pointy things that lead into the logo that you see. So knock him over. So famously, Keaton couldn't turn his head because it would have turned this entire upper piece, which is why he had so many exaggerated upper body movements in that movie. Like if you wanted to do anything just as simple as like turn around, he kind of had to do this whole like full body movement thing. That's not included on this figure. So, you know, like I said, you can turn this figure's head independently of the cowl, and it's a point of articulation. And he can look up and down fine and all that stuff. If you're looking for screen accuracy, obviously he shouldn't be able to do that. But if you're just looking for an action figure that's going to pose, this is, you know, this is what this does. Am I mad about that? Not at all. Because to me, this kind of serves as kind of a pretty cool throwback to like the earlier old school figures that I had as a kid. Because, you know, let's face it, those old Kenner and Toy Biz figures and stuff, their heads moved. And so does this. I will say also, my little other minor nitpick here is that I wish the border around the logo was painted black, because I believe it was in the movie. But yeah, like that's the only other minor little thing. It's a small paint detail, and again, not the end of the world, but would have been cool. And my last little point is that in the 89 and Returns movies, he had the cape that kind of like met the chest logo, meaning that this cape went under the cowl all the way up to the front. Now, like Hot Toys did that, Mezco did that, but this one doesn't. This cape doesn't pull very far forward any farther than like, you know, just above the shoulders, I think. Again, not the end of the world for me. And you could probably get custom capes at this point, which are going to be, you know, kind of more screen accurate to that. But you can drape it over the shoulders like this and have it look pretty similar to some of the promotional shots of the 89 movie. And, you know, it's not bad. The detail on the costume looks great. I mean, this does look like a, you know, more modern version of the 89 movie. It's got the glove details and everything too. The utility belt is nice and bright gold. And the boots, famously have like kind of the kick covers and stuff like that with the detail. And yeah, really good. Also toe joints on these figures that I forgot to mention before. But yeah, overall there's a lot of screen accurate details on here. There's a few, like I said, just minor nitpicks I have, but again, not an issue for me. So here we have him with his old school counterparts. Now that is the Toy Biz 1989 Batman based on the movie. And that is the Kenner 1990 Dark Knight collection, which is based on the movie. And this was later re-released in the Batman Returns line. Same thing. Now, famously, the licenses for the 89 movie figures, Toy Biz had them, but then it went to Kenner in 1990. There's a whole thing. I talked about that in my Batman action figure retrospective, so I'll leave a link up here and in the description if you want to watch that. By all means, it's a good video that I'm proud of. But the reason I'm bringing these guys in is to kind of show you, A, how far we've come, and B, the details on this figure kind of more closely represent these in my eyes than the actual movie itself. Like I said, you know, these are the old school figures, so you can turn their heads, and it's not like, you know, nobody was crying about the movie accuracy back then for that. And furthermore, if you look at the scalloped part of the cowl that like drapes down across his chest just above the symbol, you know, like I said, the cape belongs under there if you're going for screen accuracy. But because it's a toy from 1990, they didn't do that. They just put a clip-on cape on the back, and then they molded the detail into the figure so that, you know, at least it was somewhat accurate. But that's why I said earlier, like, this new figure is kind of more representative in my eyes of like these old school figures as opposed to the actual movie itself. Again, that's not a bad thing. I'm not mad about it. I think it's actually kind of a cool throwback, and you know, where we do live in a world where you can go buy screen accurate versions of the 89 Batman. Like I said, the Mezco one, there's the Hot Toys one that I have. There's a few different, you know, versions out there. 89 Batman's getting a lot of love lately in the past, let's say 5-10 years maybe. And I'm here for it. I love it. Would love to see a Batman Returns costume done like this. But, you know, for now, hey, you could do a lot worse than this. I genuinely like this figure quite a bit. Let's move on. Almost forgot, before we move on, here's the card artwork for the 89 Batman. So if you want to freeze frame that, read it, go right ahead. But these are cool. And now as we move on, here's the card artwork for the Batman Forever 1995 figure. Again, pause it if you want to read it. Otherwise, let's keep it moving. So here we go. Val Kilmer, 1995, Batman Forever. I said on my channel many times, I maintain that this, out of the original, you know, series of Batman movies, this is my least favorite one. There's a lot going wrong with that movie. I think it's kind of an incomplete movie. I wish that we were able to see, I guess there's the Schumacher full director's cut that's out there and available to some people right now. So hopefully, you know, down the road, maybe we fans will get to see it, and maybe my opinion of the movie will change upon seeing kind of a more complete version. But for right now, like I said, I rank this movie, last. And there's, people already in the comments typing, Batman Robin sucks. I know, shut up. But that said, this figure was probably the one that I was the most excited to see. Like, it's genuinely very, very unique, very cool. I'm not going to do the whole like posing and stuff again. Just assume that the posing that I showed with Keaton pretty much works across the board with all these figures. This figure has like kind of the shinier, like really, really dark, deep, like silvery black color scheme going on to it. The little gold on the belt buckle is a cool highlight. This is based on the costume he had at the end of the movie when, he kind of went to, that little island to fight Riddler and Two-Face and everything. Now, previously in the movie, his Batcave had, like, blown up because they found out that Bruce Wayne was Batman, so they went, destroyed everything, and so this was the only costume he had left, and it was a prototype. And they kind of just explained it away in the movie like that. So, long story short, no nipples on this costume. That would have been the earlier costume from the first, 3/4 of the movie. Also, I almost feel like, since we're talking about Batman Forever, I should probably, like, change the lighting. I don't know. Maybe this is stupid. So as you can see, the resemblance to Val Kilmer is pretty spot on, in my opinion. I think they did a really, really great job with this. My issues with like the cape and everything are, much, much less with this figure, because the way the cowl was in the Schumacher movies was different than it was in the Burton ones. So I think this works a lot better as far as action figures go. You can see the detail on the side of the cowl too, with like kind of little like I don't know if those are like earpiece holes on the top of the head there to, I don't know. This was called the sonar suit in the movie, so I'm guessing that has something to do with that. It's got a bit of detail on the top of the cowl too, and on the back of the cowl that leads kind of down across his back and into the cape. So, very, very nice. I really like this. Let me get a regular light on. I'm done doing the Batman Forever joke. A lot of screen accurate details, as far as I remember. Again, I'm not checking against movie stills to see whether or not this is completely, totally accurate, but I do like this quite a bit. It's a very unique, standout figure. I don't remember his boots being like split in the front like that, but again, like I said, I haven't watched this movie in forever.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
But yeah, I don't remember his boots having that detail, but it's entirely possible that they did. Either way, whether or not it's screen accurate, I think it looks really cool. So I wanted to bring in the Batman Forever figure. Now this one was a part of a 2-pack with Robin. I think it was called like Guardians of Gotham or something like that. This is the only way, as far as I was aware at the time, to get a screen accurate Batman figure. And the same with Robin too. So you cross the actual like basic figure line, all of the figures were like kind of the multicolored repaints with like the different gimmicks and stuff. But this was the only way to get like just, a movie version. And even then, you can see like some of the details across both figures are pretty similar. So like, yeah, if you're just comparing like, let's say the torsos, you can see that there's a lot of the detail that Kenner really hit spot on back then. And, McFarlane did a good job at translating those today. Now, the glove details and stuff are different. I think they streamlined a lot of it with Kenner. And he does have this kind of like chin piece thing that I don't know if it's screen accurate or not. But he does have like the little pointed parts of the cowl. He has like the same ear thing going on. So, for what it was, this figure was great. Had this weird pose though, like you couldn't really do anything with it. I mean, if you wanted him to punch himself in the head, he could, but I don't know. Yeah, Kenner was getting weird back then. But overall, yeah, like I said, despite this being, my least favorite of those original run of movies, this might be one of the best figures in this set. I don't know, man. Something about this really just stands out. Genuinely, very cool. All right, here's the card for Clooney from Batman and Robin. George Clooney, famously. Pause that if you'd like, read at your own leisure. Let's move on to the figure. So this is interesting to me. They released the, Forever figure that we just talked about based on the Sonar costume that he wore in the big, finale, the climax of the movie. And then the Clooney figure, they went with the costume that he wore throughout most of the movie, and they left out the one that, he kind of wore during the big finale, which was like a blue and silver looking costume. It's a ridiculous costume, let's be honest. But they went with the more basic costume. Now, interesting detail. I don't know what their thinking was on that, but, it's possible, I guess, we may see that figure at some point down the road. I don't know that. I do know that this figure is getting released in the Batman and Robin, movie series, where they're doing, a couple figures from that movie with a Build-A-Figure Mr. Freeze, Arnold Schwarzenegger, which, honestly, those figures look really good. I never thought we would see a Batman and Robin 1997 movie line in the year of our Lord 2023, but, Todd McFarlane is a lunatic, so that's pretty much going to explain everything. As you zoom in here, the likeness to George Clooney, I think, is there. You'll notice there's no color in the belt or in the Bat logo. That's because in this movie, he basically just wore like a flat black suit. Maybe not necessarily like flat black. It was more like a really, really dark grayish gunmetal style like black. But I think they captured that nicely. He's got the boot details and everything. A lot of the musculature and everything is sculpted the way that I remember the movie costume being, including the famous bat nipples. Yeah, that's what you get for getting the earlier costume from the movie, is you get the bat nipples, which, you know, it's what we all want, isn't it? Nice detail on the back. You know, it's pretty much a smooth cowl, so, you know, nothing much to write home about, but what they did is simple and quite nice. So here is the only Clooney Batman that I remember being screen accurate from the 1997 Kenner line. You can see it's a lighter silver color, like, you know, compared to like the darker bluish silver that I think is more screen accurate. But and there's also some flourishes on this one, like he has those like fin things on the back of his legs, which I don't believe he had in the movie. And this one actually, I don't know if he didn't come with a cape. I remember he had some big backpack thing that plugged in, but maybe he didn't have a cape. I don't know. But again, if I'm comparing details, there's a very strong comparison between these two. Obviously, the Kenner one, they designed him to be like super bulky and ripped and everything. But the detail on the bat emblem itself and everything, even the likeness to George Clooney, I think, on the Kenner one is quite good. So yeah, you know, just like very similar to the Keaton figure, this is kind of like a really nice upgrade to the old school 90s figure that I just have pretty good memories of as a kid. I didn't even necessarily love this movie as a kid, but something about the figures still really popped to me, so I was still collecting them. Not super deep, but I was into them. And so this kind of reminds me of that point in my life, I suppose, where I was kind of at this crossroads where if I was going to keep buying Batman figures, I had to understand that the movies weren't that good anymore, and, you know, as we all remember coming to terms with the 90s. All right, here we go. We got the Dark Knight. There's the card right there, looking pretty good. If you'd like to read it, pause, go ahead. So we're coming up on more modern territory here. I say modern, not thinking for a second that like The Dark Knight is actually probably like a 15-year-old movie as I record this, and that I'm incredibly, incredibly old. But I don't like to think about the crippling existential dread of aging and mortality and all that stuff. I prefer to just buy plastic action figures. And as I look at this Christian Bale version of Batman, I think there's a lot of great detail on this figure. This is definitely based on like the Dark Knight / Dark Knight Rises costume, which is like the more armored up version. They went with kind of a more gray scaled version of it than I remember. I want to say in the movie it was more of a flat black, but I don't mind this color palette on this figure. It's definitely really, it brings out the details, I think, possibly a little better. And, you know, let's take a closer look. All right, getting up close, you can definitely tell that's Christian Bale. They did a good job with this head sculpt. And this is definitely one of those Batman costumes that's got so many little details going on with it, and they seem like they captured most, if not all of them. Again, not sure about the gray on the costume. If I'm not mistaken, it was just black in the movie, but if it was gray, I don't think it was this stark of a difference. I think it was like just a very, very dark gray against a black, as opposed to kind of a, you know, stone gray and black. But again, not enough to make me dislike the figure by any means. You can see all the great detail in there. There's all the armor plating and Kevlar design and all that kind of stuff in there. Runs the whole way down his legs. You got kind of the plain style boots that he wore in the movie. There was no like real flourishes or details on them. They were more, you know, combat oriented, I suppose. That's the thing about the Dark Knight costume. I prefer the Batman Begins costume because it looks a little more, I don't know if organic is the right word, but I guess it definitely looks a little less like military industrial and more, you know, menacing and imposing, I suppose. I think just also the silhouette of the Begins costume is better too because of the way the cape kind of drapes across his whole body as opposed to being pulled back. He doesn't have those big shoulder piece things. And the shape of the cowl I tend to prefer on the Begins costume. But we're not talking about the Begins costume, we're talking about this one, the Dark Knight one. And for what it's worth, I think Daddy Mac did a pretty good job with this costume. Apart from the color being maybe a little bit too light on the gray, I don't see any real glaring issues with this figure. The detail on the gloves is nice. He's got kind of like the studded gloves for, you know, additional support when punching villains and the like. The belt detail is really nice. It pops, it's got the gold. I like it. And like I said, the likeness of Christian Bale is there. Looks good face on, looks good in profile. I think they did a great job with this sculpt. So here's one of the basic figures from the Dark Knight, the movie series. Not the Dark Knight collection, the Kenner 1990 Dark Knight collection. I'm talking about the movie, The Dark Knight. Can't remember if these are Mattel made these. I think it was Mattel. But you can see what I'm talking about the colors. Like the basic movie figure is a more flat black as opposed to like a flat gray with black accents on it. Once again, decent movie likeness. I don't think it's as strong as some of the earlier Kenner ones, but I don't think it's bad either. But the costume detailing and stuff is definitely pretty nicely done on there. And again, if you're looking at this McFarlane movie set as a good series of upgrades to your old school figures, I mean, you could do a lot worse. So now we're going to move into the Ben Affleck one. Here's the trading card, and here's where I'm going to kind of defer to the comments section. Tell me what I'm looking at here. Because to me, this doesn't look like the figure. This looks like the Batman v Superman costume. And I believe he may have worn this earlier in the Justice League movie. And I'm talking about the theatrical one here, not the Snyder one. Because technically that's the canon version of the movie. And I know all the Snyder people are going to be in the comments. And just like, shut. Like, nobody cares except you. But the point I'm trying to make is that the figure doesn't look like this card. And if you actually read the back of it, which I am going to like put on the screen right there. If you read this, it's describing the events of Batman v Superman. I don't know if the plan originally was to include a Batman v Superman version of Ben Affleck in this set, or, you know, what? I don't know. I know the figure doesn't look like this. When I read this, this seems more like Batman v Superman than Justice League, than either version of Justice League, I should say. So, I don't know. Whatever. Let's just look at the figure. Alright, so to me this looks like the armored up costume from the end of Justice League. If I remember the, I want to say it's probably the same costume across the Snyder one and the Joss Whedon one. I don't know for sure. Again, it's been a while since I've seen either of those movies. But the Whedon version, I know he was wearing the goggles at one point, which this one doesn't have. Which, honestly, good, because I don't want a goggled Batman. I kind of want kind of a more standard, regular version. But again, I'm not sure exactly what I'm looking at here. So somebody in the comments, please let me know. Is this just based on the end of the movie costume that Batman wore in Justice League when they were all going to fight Steppenwolf and all that? Leave a comment, let me know. So as I get a closer look at this figure, the Ben Affleck likeness is pretty nice, I do think. The metallic armored costume, while it's not my preferred look, they did a good job with it. That is to say, like, when I looked at that trading card and like kind of read the back and was kind of thinking to myself, like, man, it would have been kind of better if this was a Batman v Superman version, because I actually, you know, say what you will about that movie, I'm not a fan, but that Batman costume looked awesome. Ben Affleck as Batman and Jeremy Irons as Alfred, to me, were the best parts of those Snyder movies and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I would have, you know, been happy with that. But that said, this is not a bad figure. It's just not the version I would have preferred. I do think it looks nice. It's painted well, it's sculpted well, and it has all the movie details I can recall. Again, somebody who's not necessarily a stickler for those movies. You know, maybe my opinion is not perhaps the one you should be seeking for with any kind of authority. But if I just take this at face value, this looks pretty cool. And it is a version of Batman that I don't have in my collection up until this figure. So yeah, I'm happy to have it. I like Ben Affleck's Batman, even though, you know, I've got my issues with that universe. This figure is nice, and like I said, I wish it was a BVS costume version, but I'll take what they're putting in this box set. That's fine. And so lastly, we've come to Robert Pattinson from the 2022 The Batman movie. Here's the official write-up. If you'd like to read it, by all means, pause it. Have yourself a nice time. Let's move on. Alright, so much like the Ben Affleck figure, this is the first Robert Pattinson version of Batman that I actually own. I like what they did here. So what we've seen across all the figures is kind of like more and more escalation. Like, as the years went on, Batman became more and more armored and more like, you know, tech-oriented. And so by the time you get to the Ben Affleck one, he's like, he almost looks like a cyborg the way he's like designed. This one is a lot more streamlined, a lot more, I don't want to say dumbed down, but I guess a lot more simplified. Because Robert Pattinson's Batman is a younger version who's like only in his second year of fighting crime, I believe it said in the movie. Not 100% sure. I like that movie a lot though, so I should go back and watch it again at some point. But what they give you seems like it works pretty well. So there's the head sculpt, and I do see a lot of likeness to Robert Pattinson in here. I like the stitching on the cowl. It's very reminiscent of the movie. His costume looks very like piecemeal in the movie, like he just put it together himself based on whatever it was he had laying around. The detail on the chest plating and everything is really nice. The Bat logo, as you would have seen in the movie, is actually like a weapon that he can use, so it is removable in the movie. Obviously the toy, it can't come on and off, but the detailing is there to make it look as though it looked in the movie, which is nice. He's got kind of like the simplified armor on his arms, like the biker gear and that kind of stuff. Some cool glove details. Now this figure, what I don't like here is that the ball joints and the wrists are a little bit more protruding than some of the other versions of Batman we talked about here. It looks like they could have set those fists like a little farther into the arm so that you don't have as much of just the ball joint itself just showing. Not a huge deal, and you'll get more range of motion out of it this way. Maybe that's what they were going for, which would shock me because famously McFarlane Toys weren't ever meant to be like the most articulated things in the world, and it's only in the last couple of years that they started getting really like more articulated, so I don't know the logic there. But aesthetically, as far as that ball joint, that's really my only complaint with it. The legs look good. There's like the armor padding on both the fronts of the thighs there. He's got like looks like he's got something that should be able to clip to his leg. I don't mean like the figure has anything here, but I mean like he's just got straps across his legs like he would be carrying something over on his leg, but the figure doesn't have anything. He's got kind of like the really thick like boot covers and like just the military style like black lace-up boots. So, you know, again, very homemade looking costume for this version of Batman. This version of the character was a lot more grounded, I suppose. I don't want to say realistic because like nothing about any of these movies is realistic, but yeah, that's what we're looking at. A lot of cool detail on the belt too. He has all of his little things like sculpted on there, different pouches, little different components and stuff. I like it. So yeah, if you want a, you know, nice version of Robert Pattinson, if you didn't get the first release from back when the movie came out, you can get one in this movie set. You can dig around in your opera collection, you can find Ave Maria, and then you can play with your new Robert Pattinson Batman. Sounds fun. Alright, so we've come to the end. I've gotten the chance to look at all these and kind of like mess with them each individually for the past, you know, however long I've been in here messing with these figures. And I really, really think this set is worth your money. It's worth your time. It's worth checking out if you're a fan of the movie versions of Batman. It's probably the most complete Batman movie set you're going to get. Like I said, I choose to look at each of these figures as kind of like a really nice upgrade to the old Kenner stuff. So I'm not necessarily dying to have like screen accuracy, authenticity. I'd rather just have fun toys that I can mess with. There is definitely a time and a place for accuracy and authenticity in my collection, but you know, for something like this, it's not necessarily what I need. Now with that said, there are omissions here. Like I would have, you know, like I said earlier, I would have preferred a Batman v Superman version of Ben Affleck, and I would have preferred a Batman Begins version of Christian Bale. And you know, eventually, hopefully we see a Batman Returns Michael Keaton. They could do the alternate costumes from the movies, you know, the Schumacher movies. Who knows? I think they used what they had, and they did a really good job with repurposing. As far as I'm aware, the Bale, the Pattinson, and the Affleck are all re-releases of previous figures from those movie waves. I may be mistaken. There might be like deco changes or something, but like I said, I'm not an expert with the McFarlane stuff. So again, let me know in the comments if they're the same or if they're different. But I do know the Clooney figure is getting reused in that wave that's coming out of the Batman and Robin movie series. And the Keaton one is the same figure that comes with the re-release of the Batmobile. So, you know, there are other chances to get these figures. I think Val Kilmer is the only one that doesn't have a previous figure and is also, as far as I'm aware, currently doesn't have a figure coming out, or at least not one that's announced later. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a Batman Forever series at some point. They could do another version of the Chris O'Donnell Robin because they're doing one in the Batman and Robin series, so I'm sure they would do a Forever version as well. I don't know about Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones. You know, I don't know if that's going to be difficult for them, but whatever the case, you know, you may see it. But yeah, overall, it's tough to be mad at these figures. This is a good set. It's affordable. It's inexpensive as far as, you know, what you get. I mean, it's a big chunk of money to spend all at once, but considering what you get out of the set, I don't think it's a bad price at all. The bat signal accessory is great. You're going to get a lot of mileage out of that, especially with like all the different plates and the, you know, versions of the logo and everything. And I do have my minor nitpicks about some of the details and, you know, perhaps one or two of the costumes chosen. That's all just me, you know, like your mileage is going to vary on that. And I personally am willing to overlook those little inconsistencies just in favor of appreciating that these are genuinely fun figures. And that's, you know, it's what this is supposed to be all about. Fun, despite what the internet would have you believe right now, where everybody's arguing about everything. You got plenty of other people on YouTube that'll tell you should hate all your toys, but me, I don't know. I'm too old for that. Anyway, my name is Captain McKay. If you like this video, if you like these figures, leave a comment, let me know what you thought, and hopefully we'll see you around in the next one. Later on.